Greg James, pastor of Life Church International, CEO of Reclaiming the Land Ministries. And, one of the things that I find that has been most enjoyable is the opportunity that I've had to minister on a day-to-day basis, to empower men, to empower women with the Word of God, and to make sure that their lives are enriched. God has really afforded me an opportunity to really be a difference maker. One of the things that I realized in my own personal life is that your falls are really designed to strengthen you. It's not a failure. It's just that, hey, I didn't succeed at it this time, so I get back up and try it again.
My name is Roy Newkirk. I operate Soul Queen Women's Shoe Store. We sell shoes and ladies' accessories in the Governor Square Mall in Tallahassee, Florida. I've been in fashion all my life. I like fashion. I owned another store years ago, a few stores years ago. Always been into, had stores in Texas. I like fashion because if you dress yourself up, you feel good about yourself. It's the way we present ourselves, so we should always look good. When you look good, you feel good.
We started Leota's back in 2007. I had just left Piccadilly Cafeteria upon my mom's death, and she left me an inheritance. So, I took that inheritance and wanted to start my own business. When I was managing Piccadilly, and when it closed down, I moved to Tampa. In Tampa, I used to go to this little crowd spot, and that was something that we had never had here in Tallahassee. So when I came back, I actually had a vision that I wanted to start that in my neighborhood. So when I moved back, we did a different restaurant. Ended up trying to do this to have something to do back in the neighborhood that I grew up in. Being a black business owner in a neighborhood where that kids don't get to see this. So when we got it started in 2007, we started in a little small place, washing cars and selling crabs under a tent. And on the weekends, man, I would get a crate of crabs, put it in my Lexus, bring it off the coast, come back. We didn't have no sides, no nothing, just crabs. Boil them crabs, clean them, and sell garlic crabs. And we went from one crate. Next thing you know, I was hauling 4-5 crates in my Lexus. And I was like, oh Lord, this thing is getting out of hand. So we started, got a little bit more professional with it, started actually having them delivered. We started adding little things, the corn, potatoes, and sausage, and man, God just blessed us.
My name is Warren Cave. I'm the owner of Bless My Ride Mobile Detailing. I have a new location, which is 6553 Thomasville Road. I'm also the founder of the Clean Start Initiative, which I help assist people get their life in order. And right now, I just partnered with Leon County Jails, and I'm going to be doing a recidivism program to try to help recidivism and stop people from going in and out of jail.
This documentary is about redemption and overcoming trials and tribulations. All of the 4 popular businessmen were convicted felons, which restricted access to civic privileges, including voting in national and midterm elections.
These men faced many hardships before achieving their current success. While being incarcerated, they had to figure out how to stay connected to both their families and the outside world.
Well, being 18 years old, I had my first son. I was working. I got my first job in food service at 16 years old. I was at Hardee's. By 18, I was managing at Po Folks and also working at Hardee's. But it just wasn't enough. Having a child, I got married at 18. I got a wife. We're going to work every day, both of us, and it was just not enough. We just could not provide for ourselves and our kid the way we wanted to and the way we was raised. I'm not one of those ones came from a broken house home, came from, being in the streets and crime and stuff. I come from a good life. I had good grades in school, was doing all the right things. But started a family early and just literally was getting beat up by just not having enough revenue to take care of my family. An opportunity came for me to be able to deal drugs in the streets, and it wasn't about wanting to just do crime. It was about choosing something that was going to help me take care of my family. And it started out, I'll just do a little bit, try to get some money saved up, and it was coming so fast, and then the fame comes with it, the name comes with it, and it's like an addiction. It's just like somebody being on alcohol or drugs or anything else. The addiction for the quick money overwhelmed me, and I began to start just really devoting my whole life to selling drugs, left the jobs alone, and everything was just straight selling drugs and living that life.
29 years ago, 4 months out of my life, I made a mistake, and I've paid for it for life now.
I got indicted in 1992, and we doing this interview right here in Tallahassee, Florida. I went to school here, and but unfortunately, I had the mind and I had the support of a loving family that sent me up here to college. But temptations of wanting to be a success ahead of time, the temptations of wanting money, I got into the so-called drug trade, really the drug trade.
It's so amazing because the embarrassing of what had happened to me in 1995 wasn't a secret. I mean, my face was on every newspaper. Every chance the news got a chance to tell a story about somebody falling, they highlighted me. Even after I was incarcerated, whenever somebody failed, they went back to my experience. So there is no secret to the fact that Greg James went to prison as a pastor selling drugs. No excuse.
Most of my charges is back from the 90s and late 80s and the 90s, mid 90s or so. And so I started preaching while I was incarcerated in the county jail. So when I got out, I started pastoring and moved to New York, pastor able to vote in New York. Moved to Texas, pastor able to vote in Texas. Moved back here. In 2013, realized I couldn't vote.
It started in high school. I began to be a drug dealer in high school and was spiraling downwards as an addictive person, drinking and drugging. Spent 4 years in the 10th grade. Got out, never graduated, but I continued to go downwards as a result of drinking and drugging. But with that came jail and incarceration. My first felony was in 1984. So with that being said, I was a convicted felon from then on. Graduated in prison in '89, but the effects of the felony followed me all the way to November 6th of 2018. Never was able to vote, not just the voting part, but being able to get a good job. I'm a business owner, which is great, but I would love to have a job where I can go to work every day from 8 to 5 and get $40,000 a year, but because of my record in my past, no one is offering me that.
Yeah, I've had a number of conversations with inmates when I was the Secretary of the Department of Corrections particularly. There has always been, at least in the experience I've had, persons who are incarcerated spend, let's say, 20 years, 10 years, 5 years in prison. They are first and foremost concerned about how do they reconnect with their families when they come back into society? How do they become gainfully employed? What happened to their relationship with their children? Those are primarily the three basic questions that everyone that I've talked to have had. And from that experience, I've tried to make sure that when I was Secretary of the Department of Corrections, particularly again, tried to make sure that those three transitional processes were maximized as much as we possibly could. That is, how do we help this person reconnect with a job back in their community? And that's what we came up with, reentry efforts that you see all across Florida. The second is, how do they reconnect with their loved ones, with their families? And then in understanding that 20 years past, those families have moved on. And then trying to make sure how can we reconnect them with their children in a way that, in many instances, these young men I'm talking about go to prison and have very little contact with their families while they're incarcerated. And so we try to figure out a way through the reentry process of making those connections. And sometimes that's a painful process. And sometimes it's just simply saying that which you had 20 years ago doesn't exist again, and you've got to start anew.
Well, as you know, Amendment 4 was the amendment to the Constitution that allows for the rights of felons to be restored once they've completed their sentences, as long as they haven't been convicted of murder or a sexual offense. I think that the result will be overwhelmingly that the 1.5 million people who will have their rights restored, I think a vast majority of those will go ahead and register to vote and have their rights restored. Amongst those things that can happen are not only the ability to vote, but we're talking about giving these people the ability to run for office, to be able to join back into the system where they can live in certain places because their rights have been restored. They can participate in society as a whole and then create an economic impact because they've become a part of society again. Desmond Meade likes to say that they're returning citizens, and I believe that's what we'll have is our returning citizens, because they get the chance to be citizens again as opposed to being felons or ex-felons. And the results, I believe, will be increased prosperity for our entire state of Florida, as Florida was one of 4 states that did not automatically restore those rights.
Long before there was even a discussion of Amendment 4, I routinely talked on this radio program about the need for reform in our criminal justice system, but specifically the very issue that Amendment 4 deals with. Unfortunately, the people that you may have talked to, are talking to, whether they're on the left or the right politically, Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, most of them are going to come at this as a political issue. I view it as right and wrong. As a Christian, I look at most of issues that I talk about, most of the things, including Amendment 4, through the lens of my faith. And from a faith perspective, and as someone who has received grace, I look at Amendment 4 as an absolute no-brainer. Why in the world would we not restore the rights to people that have paid their debt to society? It's a cliche, but it's a reality. And if people are not satisfied that that's enough, then fine, make the sentence longer. But whenever someone's done, they've made restitution, they've corrected their errors. If we expect someone to be part of this community, part of society, employed, how can we treat them as something less than a non-citizen? And by not allowing people the right to vote, you're stripping a fundamental right that our founders believed in wholeheartedly. It's one of the distinctions that makes this country so unique, for all of its imperfections, is that right to vote. So many people view it as, well, most of the felons are going to vote Democrat and so forth. My position is, I don't care. You do the right thing.
After the passage of Amendment 4, having grown up in a household and in a family where 2 of my siblings themselves had their rights taken away from them, for me very personally meant that 2 of the closest people in my life would have the opportunity to get out, to participate, and in many ways to feel whole again in the process. Scale that up to now 1.4 million people who for decades, in some cases, have been locked out of the ability and the process of choosing their leaders and holding those leaders accountable in a very real way. The passage of Amendment 4 instilled in them another sense of humanity and another sense of citizenship, that they too mattered in the processes, that their voices would be heard, and more importantly, their voice through the activation of their vote would mean that they could determine the outcome of elections, and by virtue of that, the outcome of what happens in their neighborhoods and in their communities.
I have been in law enforcement for over 40 years, and during that time, I've seen my own family members, in some instances, arrested. I've seen both the good side of law enforcement and the ugly side of law enforcement. And I know that there are any number of persons who've been arrested, were arrested in some instances because of the circumstances in which they found themselves. And there are instances where people have been incarcerated when they did not commit the crime. And so I don't make those judgments. I try to, in my position, in each of the positions I've held in law enforcement, I've tried to value the person as a human being, and understanding that, as we say in my church, but for the grace of God, there perhaps goes me as well. And so when I interact with persons who are incarcerated, first I understand that perhaps they did make a mistake. We all make mistakes. Sometimes our mistakes are not known to the public. They're known by us, but they're mistakes all the same. And in that regard, I try to treat them as people just like I am, who are just trying to do the best they can to survive in this thing called planet Earth.
Today is January 8, 2019, which is a historical day, and it's a historical day whereas we're gonna make history because we coming out and restore our rights to vote. We paid our debt to society. It's great that Florida has stepped up and has forgiven us, and you know that's what life is about. It's about second chances, third chances, and it's about forgiveness. Forgiveness is a key to society. It's a key to democracy. It's a key to love. It's the key to progress. And so it's about forgiveness and progress, and we just got to keep on moving and be thankful and keep making right choices and be examples for our younger generations, and they won't get caught up in these kind of circumstances where we could be spending time and energy trying to restore a given right.
I really feel that now I'm leading the Freedom Party, relieved, excited. I mean, there is great anticipation. I really feel like I'm a part of the process again. I mean, no matter what I had done up until this point, no matter how much I've given back to the community, no matter how many programs I engaged myself in, the process to vote was what was missing. So now I'm a part of that process. So I'm excited about it.
To be honest, I was a little bit nervous, anxious, kind of butterflies in my stomach, excited, hoping that the laws hadn't been changed, hoping that something last minute hadn't been slipped through with the new governor. But yet also noticing that he said he's going to respect the will of the people that passed legislation, passed the amendment. So I was excited. I felt like, it's a new day and beautiful skies. I came here about 45 minutes before the place opened to get in line and to be the first in line to register to vote.
Man, this is my voter registration. I am now a registered voter of the state of Florida.
A lot of times, we don't see the value of something until the value is taken away. And when I was younger, 18, 19, we had to register with selected service and all of that back in the day, because some of these, they don't know nothing about all of that. But we had to go through all of that and then register to vote. And when I was younger, I didn't take it as serious. As I got older, I took it a lot more serious. But then when it was taken away, I realized how important it is. And a lot of times we don't value something until we lose what that is. And even though I valued it, I see more of the treasure and the value in having that voice when it was taken away. Because now I looked at myself in the background speaking, saying, you want me to pay my taxes, you want me to help put you in position, but you don't want me to have a voice about anything you say or do. And to be able to sit down and fill out that form and say, now I have a voice that you can hear me, I can't explain it, man. I can't explain it.
I voted in 1984. It's been 35 years this year. 1984. I got a paper to vote when Barack Obama was running They gave me a paper from the supervisor of elections, and then they told me I still was a convicted felon. I had no right. So I haven't legally exercised the right to vote since 1984. And serious, I was here at 7:45 this morning. When it's time to vote, early voting in 2020, watch me camp out at the elections office, because I'm going to vote. I'm going to exercise my right to vote. It's a privilege. I'm getting kind of choked up now because it's been a long time. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful. I know what it's like, and it's a blessing. And I really want to thank people for voting yes. This is a blessing for me. It's been a long time coming, and I'm going to exercise my right to vote. I'm gonna say this, but I'm also going to continuously exercise my right to be a successful and a productive member of society and to help people better their lives. Thank you.
I will be studying what amendments and what kind of laws they plan and where they going to be putting our money at. And I want our money to work for us in our community. So we have to be mindful of this. So this right here, this our power.